Hey everybody, this is Stratagem, and today I'm going to try to make sense of the timeline of Friendship is Magic and Equestria in general. Now this has been a project that I wanted to do for quite a while, and well, with Season 9 going on right now, I think that we now have all the information we will ever get from the show. So let's give this a try. I'm going to warn you right away, it is not going to be perfect. There are a few things that I am not entirely sure of, but I tried my best to piece them together in a way that makes sense. Now, before we start, there are a few rules that we have to set up in order to have meaningful results here. So first of all are the sources. The only source I'm going to use is the show itself, including the shorts and the Best Gift Ever special. Everything else, comics, books, Equestria Girls, and side series like Fundamentals of Magic and Flurry Heart's scrapbook, I am going to leave out. So just the show itself and its specials, because I think that's the lowest common denominator that we can all agree on is in fact canon. Now I know that especially the books and the comics do have some interesting tidbits about the lore and the background of everything. However, first of all, I do not have all the books and comics. I have quite a few of them, but not all, and strictly technically speaking, they aren't completely canon. I mean, some of these things could be canon, some of these things probably are canon, but there are also some comics which obviously do not work at all, which sometimes even openly contradict things that happen in the show, so I'm not taking any of them into consideration, because if I started to do that, then I would have to say, okay, this comic is okay, this one's canon, and this one isn't, and who am I to judge that? I mean, I'm just some guy on the internet, I don't have any authority, so I just say, not taking the comics, so yeah. The other rule is, and well, it's pretty much a given, but I think I should state it for completeness sake, I'm just going to assume that time works pretty much the same way in Equestria as it does on Earth. So a day has about 24 hours, a year has about 365 days, and all that. Also, I'm going to assume that the holidays, which are very important to piece together the timeline of the show itself, are annually. So they don't have 3 Heartswarmings every year, but Summer Sun Celebration only happens once every 5 years or some nonsense like that. No, I'm going to assume that they are actually annually. I think it is pretty fair to assume that that's actually the case, but yeah, that's just so that we're in the clear here. And for the sake of reference, I'm going to say that the start of the show, so Season 1 Episode 1, is our year 0, so that's going to be our frame of reference. Alright, and with that out of the way, let's get to it. Now, the very earliest thing we know about Equestrian history is actually something that was just revealed to us in the Season 9 premiere. Groger stated that he was ruling the land that would become Equestria, more on that later, for an epoch, which isn't really a helpful term, because that could be anything from a few years up to centuries, millennia even. The only thing we know for certain is that his reign came to an end when he was defeated by the unicorn Gusty the Great, and that he has then spent millennia to regain his power. So from that we can infer that he had to be defeated at least 2000 years ago, because, well, a millennium is 1000 years, so if he has been planning for millennia, that means at least 2000 years, probably longer, but we don't exactly know. Now, as an aside, what little we know about Groger is a little bit strange when you consider the fact that the 3 tribes actually lived someplace else before they founded Equestria. So Groger stating that he ruled the land that would become Equestria and him then getting defeated by a unicorn, that at first sounds a bit contradictory. However, I think an explanation for that is that after the founding of Equestria and the defeat of the Windigos, the nation started to expand and did reclaim the ancestral homelands of the Earth Ponies, Unicorns and Pegasi. Now, another odd thing about Groger's story is, back in Season 7, Episode 3, when Twilight was reading a story to the children in the hospital, that story stated that Gusty the Great and her army tried to reach Cloudsdale by foot. That is a little bit strange. Not the whole thing trying to reach the Flying City by foot, that is just insane. But I'm talking about the fact that Cloudsdale was around at that point. Which, well, we do know that Cloudsdale is in Equestria, however, we also know that Cloudsdale can be moved. So I'm just going to assume that Cloudsdale was at a very, very different place back then, most likely in the ancestral home of the Pegasi, and that afterwards, once the Windigos were banished, at some point Cloudsdale got moved over close to Canterlot. Or maybe it's a different city with the same name altogether, we don't know. but I just wanted to mention this because that is one of the things that struck me as a little bit odd with the whole Groger story. Now, a final side note about Groger, and this doesn't have anything to do with the timeline, it's just a little detail I noticed, and while this is speculation on my part, if you completely 100% want to avoid any and all possible spoilers for Season 9, you might want to skip forward a little bit. I'm putting a timestamp here, because what I'm saying now is it's just a theory, but if it's true, it might be a spoiler for things that are going to happen in Season 9. Alright, here we go. So, Gusty the Great took Grogar's bell, which was the source of his power. Okay, that's weird. As far as I know, that's a reference to G1, in which Groger also had a magic bell. And yeah, we see that he is missing the center bell on his collar. And G, I wonder where that bell could have ended up. It is a mystery to absolutely everyone. And I wonder if Groger is going to try to reclaim it at some point in the season. Gee! But yeah, as I said, just a theory, but I think that was a pretty obvious hint. Anyway, back to the timeline. For several thousand years, nothing happens, or probably a lot of things happen, but we have absolutely no idea what is going to happen. So the first thing on the actual timeline would be the time of the 3 tribes. Now, the earliest information we have about Equestria is actually the time before the founding of the nation of Equestria, and that's at a time period that I assume is somewhere between 1100 and 1200 years in the past. That is starting with the time of the 3 tribes, back when they were at an uneasy peace with one another and before they were actually united. During that time period, we know that Starswirl and the founders of Equestria, so Clover the Clever and Princess Platinum for the Unicorns, Private Pansy and Commander Hurricane for the Pegasi, and Smart Cookie and Chancellor Puddinghead for the Earth Ponies, were born. I'm going to assume that Starswirl is actually older than them, because Season 2 Episode 11, Heartswarming Eve, Twilight in the role of Clover the Clever actually referred to Starswirl as Clover's mentor. So I guess it's fair to assume that Starswirl is a bit older than them. However, that's not the important part. What is important is that later on the whole Windigo incident happened, which led to the 3 tribes leaving their homelands, wherever those are, and searching out to find new land. This, as we know from the Heartswarming Eve storyline, led to the founding of the 3 new countries, Pegasopolis, Unicornia and Earth, which at some later point led to the founding of Equestria, once the Windigos had found them again. And at that point it is pretty fair to assume that Celestia and Luna were maybe around, but they were definitely not the rulers of Equestria, because Equestria was founded by, well, the founding fathers. So Princess Platinum for Unicorns, Commander Hurricane for the Pegasi, and Chancellor Puddinghead for the Earth Ponies. Seeing how they formed the country, and the Heartswarming pageant story never mentioned that they put Celestia and Luna in charge afterwards, so I'm going to assume that they were not ruling Equestria at this point. So the next time period is the early stages of Equestria, which I assume ended about 1100 years ago. So after Equestria was founded, we know from Horseplay that the unicorns who were raising the sun and moon were having some trouble doing that, leading to the unicorn mages actually using up all their magic and leaving them drained. But also from Horseplay we know that Celestia has her special talent in raising the sun. So we know that at some point after the founding of Equestria, Celestia first raised the sun, which I think we can pinpoint to about 1108 years before the beginning of the show. More on that later. And yeah, we definitely know that this was after the founding of Equestria. And that is actually pretty helpful to know this date, because we know that this event, the first raising of the sun by Celestia, was after the founding of Equestria. Twilight stage play is pretty much called A New Day in Equestria, so yeah. And also we know that the pillars were still around, so it was before the Pony of Shadows incident, and probably also before the planting of the Tree of Harmony. Now somewhere around the same time, after Celestia first raised the sun, Celestia, and probably Luna sometime later, have ascended to become alicorns. Now the exact order of things is a bit murky here in this section around 1100 years before the beginning of the show. I'm going to assume that Celestia either ascended when she first raised the sun or shortly thereafter, though my only reference for that is that when Fluttershy was playing Celestia in Twilight's stage play, she did have a fake horn and did not wear a costume to hide her wings, so I guess that she was already an alicorn at that point. So yeah, this is a bit murky. What is less murky is that Celestia and Luna were at this point destined or chosen to become the rulers of Equestria, because their castle in the Everfree Forest was built at around that time. We can see that in the Season 7 finale, Stygian actually attacked the pillars inside the castle of the two sisters. So why would they build a castle for Celestia and Luna if they weren't chosen to be the leaders or were already the leaders of Equestria? Though I think that they weren't actually in office as of yet, because Celestia actually mentioned that she never met the other pillars and that Starswirl didn't tell her everything that was going on because she was too young at that point. So yeah, I'm going to assume that they weren't actually the rulers at that point. And at around the same time that the Castle of the Two Sisters was built, the pillars most likely also planted the Tree of Harmony. Because the tree being planted in that cave beneath the castle, it is very unlikely that that's a coincidence. So the pillars most likely decided, hey, you have a free forest, that's a bit of a problem, let's build a castle here and plant the tree beneath it, so that the tree is at a strategic point where it can control the forest, and the castle is close by, so that the future rulers of Equestria would have easy access to the elements. However, he and the other pillars obviously didn't get around to tell Celestia about the tree, because, well, that thing was discovered later. And when the pillars decided to banish the Pony of Shadows and go to Limbo with him, well, the knowledge about the tree was kinda lost. Which was probably not what they intended, but yeah, we know that Starswirl tends to make some mistakes sometimes. He probably thought that his journal would find its way back to Celestia, but as we all know, it didn't. Anyway, next part of Equestrian history, this part probably starts at around 1090, 1080 years before the start of the show. Celestia and Luna ascended the throne and became the proper rulers of Equestria. Short Equestria Girl side note, at around this point in time, Clover the Clever must have hidden the memory stone in the Equestria Girls world. But that just as a side note, this isn't about Equestria Girls and it's not really important to the overall Friendship is Magic storyline, but just thought I would mention this here. So now for more weird stuff, and that is Discord and Tirek. Who came first? I'm going to assume that Discord was first. So Discord came from wherever, we don't have any backstory on him. He basically ruled over Equestria for some time, several years most like, until Celestia and Luna discovered the elements of harmony beneath their castle and used them to turn Discord into stone. We know that from the Season 4 premiere. We saw Celestia and Luna discovering the tree and the elements and using them to banish Discord. From that we can be 100% certain that this was after the pillars had left Equestria, since the tree had already grown big enough to, well, bear fruit, so to speak. At some later point then Tirek appeared from some other world, he did some stuff, and then he was defeated as well. We don't know how he was defeated. We know it was Celestia and Luna who banished him to Tartarus, and they probably used the elements of harmony for this as well. I'm saying this because, well, the main six needed the elements, or rather the rainbow powers, which are pretty much the power of the elements, but embodied in them. So yeah, I'm going to assume that Celestia and Luna actually used the elements as well to get rid of Tirek. At some point later still, Sombra appeared and was defeated, and then Luna finally started to turn into Nightmare Moon, and then, most likely exactly 1000 years before the beginning of the show, Nightmare Moon was banished. And that was the last time that the elements were used for quite a long time. Their location became forgotten, and when they were found later on they were actually inert, and Celestia explicitly stated that she and Luna had lost their connection to the elements after the main six became the element bearers. So I guess it's fair to say that there were no element bearers in between that time. And then for 1000 years absolutely nothing happened. Seriously, we have absolutely no information about anything that happened between Luna's banishment and the show premiere. Well, I guess we know that Ponyville was founded a few hundred years before the events of the show, and that maybe 20 years before the beginning of the show the main six were born, but that's about it. Now onto the timeline of the show, and oh boy, that timeline is a convoluted one. Let's start with the first year, and the first year is actually the entirety of the seasons 1, 2 and 3. Yes, everything from Season 1 Episode 1 up until and including Season 4 Episode 1 takes place within the span of 1 year. Because in Season 1 Episode 1 the Summer Sun celebration happens. and the next Summer Sun celebration happens in Season 4, Episode 2. Now, one could argue that not all holidays are shown. I mean, we only have 2 Nightmare Night episodes and 4 Heartswarming episodes, plus the Heartswarming special. So, yeah, maybe they don't show everything. And that's a good point, but remember what Celestia says in Princess Twilight Sparkle Part 2. She states that this Summer Sun celebration is the first one since Luna returned. And since it's pretty fair to assume that the longest day of the year is a thing that happens about once a year, that actually means that, yeah, the entirety of the first 3 seasons takes place in a span of 1 year. So let's try to get the episodes of the first 3 seasons into order a little bit. To be completely fair, a definitive order isn't really possible. A lot of the episodes could happen at pretty much any point. There are a few episodes of which we know they have to happen after certain other episodes, but for the most part they are pretty interchangeable in their order. However, a few exceptions exist. Obviously, Friendship is Magic Part 1 and 2 are the first episodes, because before them Twilight wasn't living in Ponyville and she didn't know any of the remaining 5. So yeah, those are definitely the first episodes. We also know that Ticketmaster has to be before Suited for Success and Best Night Ever. Magic Duel has to be after Ghostbusters. Every episode featuring Zecora has to happen after Bridal Gossip. And every episode featuring the CMC has to happen after Call of the Cutie. But other than that, we are pretty free. 2 other things that help put the order of episodes into perspective are the introduction of Aloysius in All's Well That Ends Well and the subsequent introduction of Tank in May the Best Pet Win. And also, every episode that has a letter written by someone who isn't Twilight has to happen after Lesson 0. Now, for the most part, we can assume that the episodes just work in the order that the episodes aired in, with 1 minor and 4 bigger exceptions. The minor exception is that Season 1 Episode 5, Griffin the Brush Off, most likely takes place after Season 1 Episode 16, Sonic Rainboom, because in the opening of that episode, Pinkie Pie is pretty much retelling the events of Sonic Rainboom. Though, to be fair, that could just be Pinkie Pie breaking the 4th wall as well. What is not breaking the 4th wall is the order of these 4 episodes, and those are in order Season 2 Episode 4, Luna Eclipsed, which takes place at around Halloween or Nightmare Night, which is happening in early or mid-fall. Immediately followed by Fall Weather Friends, which marks the transition of fall to winter, which is in mid to late December. Immediately followed by Season 2 Episode 11, Heartswarming Eve, which is near the end of a year in winter, which is then followed by Winter Wrap Up, which marks the end of winter. I'm pretty sure that these episodes have to go in this order because, well, there are no other episodes that actually take place during fall or winter. That's another problem. Most episodes take place during a nondescript spring or summer setting, so it's kinda hard to put them in order. Now, after Winter Wrap-Up, there will be a few more episodes, which will finally lead up to the Season 3 finale, Magical Mystery Cure, in which Twilight ascends to become an Alicorn. This is another very important point to use to order the episodes, because Twilight's Ascension means that every episode in Season 4 and later definitely takes place after Season 3 since, well, Twilight has wings. And unlike the Pets or the Cake Twins or Cranky Doodle or other characters that could be used to measure time, Twilight is the main character, so she's in almost every episode, and thus we can use her to order the episodes a little bit. Now, before we move on to Season 4 and later, which for the most part seem to be in proper chronological order, which will really allow us to speed things up quite a bit here, I want to do another little aside here, and that is at some point between Magical Mystery Cure and Princess Twilight Sparkle Part 1, the events of Equestria Girls 1 must have taken place. Again, this isn't about Equestria Girls, but just so you know. Now, as I already mentioned before, Season 4 Episode 2 takes place pretty much exactly 1 year after the show premiere. And from then on, important time markers are Season 4 Episode 26, the destruction of the Golden Oak Library, and the subsequent introduction of the Castle of Friendship playset. So whenever we see that thing in the background, we know it must be after this. But again, things are pretty much in order here, so no problem. Oh yeah, and between Season 4 and Season 5, Equestria Girls Rainbow Rocks happens. After that, another point in time is the activation of the map, and then we have Cadence's pregnancy. And this is important, I specifically looked this up. Ponies are pregnant for about 11 to 12 months. Cadence and Shining Armor most likely informed Twilight pretty early on, So we can assume that the season 6 premiere happened maybe 9 to 11 months later. You don't know that someone is pregnant right away, but I think after 2 or 3 months you definitely notice it and you will inform your relatives. We also have season 5 episode 21, which is another Nightmare Night episode. So assuming that we didn't skip any holidays, this takes place exactly 1 year after the season 2 Nightmare Night episode, and thereafter is the Heartbreakers episode, which then logically takes place about a year after the first Heartwarming episode in season 2 as well. So yeah, season 4 and 5 seem to be taking place within the span of 1 year. So on to season 6 and 7. And let me tell you, season 7 is not helpful at all for the timeline. But first things first, season 6. Season 6 starts out with Flurry Heart being born, so we know that this is almost a year after season 5 episode 19. And later on, season 6 episode 8, we have another Heartwarming episode, which I think it's very fair to assume that this takes place exactly 1 year after the last Heartwarming episode. Because this is, as we know, Starlight's first Heartwarming Eve in Ponyville. So since the event of the season 5 finale, there has been less than a year. There has not been another Heartwarming in the way. And since there was no snow to be seen in the season 5 finale, I'm pretty sure it's fair to assume that Starlight didn't join the main cast on the 28th of December or something like that. Now season 7 is not helpful at all. There are no holiday episodes or anything. Now, due to Heartwarming, Flurry being born, Flurry being old enough to go on travels, and her parents being stressed out enough that they need some free time, I'm going to assume that at some point during season 7, or maybe very early season 8, a new year actually begins. Well, a new year for our counting here, seeing how I try to put the breakpoints at around the Summer Sun celebration. In very late year 2 or early year 3, I assume, the School of Friendship gets founded. This could once again be used to measure the order of the episodes, but again, for the most part, the episodes seem to be in order now, so we don't really need it. However, the school is going to be helpful later on for us. It isn't at first, because the first episode that actually is really helpful for us is season 8 episode 7 Horseplay, in which we find out that 1111 years ago Celestia first raised the sun. Seeing how we are in the year +3 right now, we can now calculate 3 minus 1111, that is minus 1108, so we know that 1108 years before the beginning of the show was the first raising of the sun, which we already pointed out a lot earlier in the founding of Equestria thingy. But yeah, this is where I actually got that date from. Another very important episode in season 8 is the fan favorite non-compete clause, episode 9, which shows us that Fluttershy has been Teacher of the Month for 9 months in a row. This means at that point the school has been around for at least 9 months. So time is progressing a lot faster all of a sudden. Then season 8 episode 15, the Heartwarming Club, that is the first Heartwarming in the school, which is good to know. Now I said that I'm going to take the shorts into consideration as well. So let's use the Teacher of the Month short, which showed us that Fluttershy is now Teacher of the Month for 16 months in a row. So the school has been around for over a year. This is why I put that break there. At some point a new year has begun, and taking that short into consideration, I would assume that the Best Gift Ever special actually depicts yet another Heartwarming, and not the same one from the Heartwarming Club, seeing how the students leave for their home kingdoms at the beginning of the episode and are shown to be at home at the end of the special. So yeah, while both the short and the special could, for all we know, happen at some point during or after season 9, I'm just going to assume that they didn't do anything that far out of order and that they actually happened before season 9. Which means that the entirety of season 8, including the short and the special, probably took 1.5, maybe 2 years. So I guess that School Race was at least 1 year after the founding of the school. And then season 9, well, the school was in summer break, as we have seen. It was explicitly stated in episode 3, Uprooted, that summer break is still going on. So summer break, summer, maybe it's time for another Summer Sun celebration, I don't know. But I guess that season 9 takes place in, well, late year 4, early year 5 of the depicted in-universe time. Well, this was exhausting. I hope it was also exhaustive. And yeah, so I hope that this was, well, I guess informative for you guys. Probably not so much entertaining, to be honest. Let me know in the comments below what you think the timeline is. Tell me if you agree or disagree with my assessments here. If you think I made any errors, please let me know. There are probably some mistakes in this, but honestly, except for some unclear details, I couldn't find any. Let me know if you spotted any errors in my calculations here, and if you do, please provide a reference. Keep in mind, only show episodes and the specials, because as I stated, I'm going to ignore the books and comics for this. I know this is probably not the best idea since they have some good sources, but yeah, some of them are probably good sources, but others are pretty off the wall and don't fit into the show's canon. So yeah, I've already stated my reasoning as to why I'm not using them. And this one has been going on way too long. I am going to call it quits here. Just as a little meta information, I have been recording for over 90 minutes now, and once I'm done editing, this video is most likely going to be like 15 minutes, and you'll be wondering what I'm even talking about. And yeah, this is weird. So I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. So if you like the video, please consider leaving a like on the video and or subscribe to my channel. Though if you just stumbled upon this video, be forewarned, this is usually a reaction channel about MLP, MLP fanworks, and lately Philly Fantasia as well. So these kind of videos, analysis and all that, I don't do that very often. So yeah, you have been warned. And with saying that, I completely screwed up my outro, which I guess is par for the course here. I am a trained professional, I know what I'm doing. So, as always, I have been Stratagem. Thanks for watching and see ya next time.